Welcome to the egg, everybody. We'll get started every Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, 6:30 Mountain, 5:30 Pacific. I know we don't have all of that, but we do also like to give you our opinions and views here are just our own. That's our disclaimer. We do this every Wednesday of the month. Week 1 is Stepping into the Constitution with Michael Gordon. Week 2 is Of Historical Importance with Martin Holtz. Week 3 is Restoring America as a Land of Liberty with myself and Carolyn Voss. And Week 4 is Pathway to the Monument with Patrick Locke. And looking forward to every single one of these. And I just wanted to share all of our memes because they're so pretty. Penny did such a beautiful job of putting all of these together for us.
Amen.
Don't forget about Liberty Labs every Friday night at 8 Eastern with Brad Boardman. And also Zoom Thank Pray Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And there's a schedule of those fellowships and prayers that we have. Move on to Project America 125, and we are still advertising that. Want everybody to get big, get educated, and if you have not activated yet, please do so there at that site.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for all the brothers and sisters that are here that have the same passion in their hearts. We know that this has to be done through you, Lord Jesus Christ. We can't do this without you. America's been broken because we turned our back on you, but we're here. We're the remnants that are ready to turn the tides here. We know that this is going to be the leadership of our future, and we're praying for generations to step up and say, we got to do this. Father, we ask you to pour your blood of protection over every one of our soldiers that are fighting in these wars. And Father, I rebuke all evil and the evil leaders, what they've done to these people and hurt them. Father, I ask you to take all evil out of every leadership that's in our world, not just America, in our world. We know that Satan's ran rampant across the world long enough. We rebuke everything that he's done. We cast out any demons. We remove any shackles or chains that he's put in America and in any other country. Father, we ask for your blood of protection over this room. Plant your archangels in here and keep us protected tonight. Let everyone get the wisdom, the knowledge, the truth that we're all seeking. And Father, most of all, we thank you for Michael, the wisdom and the knowledge that he's willing to share with us. We thank you for leadership of Robert and Kathleen and Cal and Darlene and all the coordinators that are here. We thank you for the leadership of Donnie and Marilyn, what they're doing with Project 125. Father, this is such a beautiful mission. And we know that this is about the Bible, glorifying you in the Constitution. And thank you for letting us be a part of this, Father. We give all this up in your name and everything you've done for us. We thank you. We give you all the glory, honor, and praise for everything. In Jesus' mighty name I pray, amen and amen.
Amen, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Carolyn. Wonderful. And at this time, I'm going to head and turn it over to Michael Gordon because it sounds as if my cats are getting very active. So thank you, Michael. It's your share.
My own disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, a psychologist, or a priest. I am Mr. Nobody, just providing information and some of my opinions related to our U.S. Constitution. So please think for yourself and act responsibly. I am not advocating violence of any kind, only peaceful and lawful assembly, thought, speech, and action. The mission of Tactical Civics is to glorify Jesus Christ and maintain our civilization by living like responsible adults, enforcing what we stipulate in our Constitution. Beautiful mission. So, just so you know, not everyone on this call is a member of Tactical Civics, but it's members of Tactical Civics who put this program together. So we always keep that in mind with what we're doing. All right, so quick review of the last session, which was the first session of this particular series. We covered the hierarchy of authority in America, and it starts with God and the whole Bible and Christ and the Holy Spirit. And we the people are accountable to God. And the we the people includes petit jury, grand jury, state militia. Not that we have one right now, but these are institutions that are we the people. And so that's above the Declaration of Independence, the state constitutions, and the U.S. Constitution. All of those are created by we the people. So we the people is a higher authority than any document that we have created. Obviously, the Holy Bible is different. And then if you see the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution is dependent upon the U.S. Constitution. That's what the dashed line shows. And then the U.S. and state constitutions are dependent upon or founded upon the Declaration. And then you have the lower types of documents as well. All right, so we covered that extensively last time. And then we also talked about the political spectrum, going instead of left, right in the usual way it's done. It's the amount of power that the government has, either no power, which is anarchy, total power government, which is all these different things on the left. And we in the Constitution are in the middle, protecting the rights of the people. And we talked about the forms of government, and just monarchy, oligarchy, democracy, republic, and anarchy. So if you remember, monarchy is ruled by one, oligarchy is ruled by the few, democracy ruled by majority. And we define republic as ruled by law, which we're going to change that because it's technically not correct. So I'm going to talk about that. And anarchy is no one rules, or anything goes. And then the gist of where we left it on that nice video we watched was we have a choice between two options. We can have a monopolistic state-controlled economy under an oligarchy, or a competitive free enterprise in a republic. And I think everybody can relate. So we're going to revise a couple of definitions real quick. A republic, and this comes from James Madison, and I looked at all sorts of sources, and it's pretty much a consensus. A republic is a state or nation with a government system in which the scheme of representation takes place. Now, if you do a search, you can find there are hundreds of republics, including the People's Republic of China, and there was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So everybody wants to call themselves a republic, and they all claim that to represent the people. But a lot of those, especially what the social republics, are really oligarchies ruled by the few. So a true republic is where the majority, or we the people themselves, is represented. So it's not just a few people that are represented. It's most people. So to keep that in mind, you're gonna see that it shows up in our documents, especially in the Constitution. So we need to understand what they mean by that. And of course, previously we defined capital as the means of production. I just wanted to extend that to include distribution and exchange as well, because that is actually considered capital. So I didn't think that the previous definition was 100% correct. All right. That being said, first question of the day, and we're going to look at the chat room. Okay, so here's the question. What is the U.S. Constitution?
Let's see who can get it in one word.
I know it's hard to do one word. If you don't, that's okay as long as it's short, but I'm looking for one word. Okay, I see a couple: law, preamble, contract. There's no wrong answers here, guys. Just be brave. We're not going to laugh at you. Nobody knows everything, and I'm asking the way I'm asking the question. I'm looking for an answer, but I just want to see what people think, and it's good to get you guys start thinking and letting other folks see how people would answer this question. Ground rules, instructions, purpose, directions. Good stuff. Keep going. Structure.
We even got some that are answering it in one word. That's really amazing.
I know. People that follow directions, you get a gold star. Yeah, it helps when you don't type as much because it's easier to see everything. It doesn't scroll by so fast. Law that rules all. Okay, that's a good one. Liberty, framework.
Darlene put in framework. That's a good one.
Very good. Yep. All these things are true. Anti-establishmentarianism. Way to go, Martin. Directions. Oh, I like that. Phoebe. Principles. Okay, good. Strength. All these are great attributes of the Constitution. What is the Constitution? Liberty. Got a couple of those. One of our favorite words. Oh, preamble is up there too. Okay, that's part of the Constitution. Law. Kathleen said law. That's a good one. All these are, true. But I'm looking for something in particular. But it's okay if we don't get there. I love it that you're trying and working it and thinking about it. Boundaries. Ooh, I like that. Rights guaranteed. Another framework. Good, good. All right. Well, you guys are doing great. I love the effort. So I'm going to move on to the answer that I came up with. Doesn't mean any of these aren't wrong. They're all good. Compact. Ooh, I like that one. Oh, Ken Chapman says document. Oh, did he see that or did he come up with that? Did I miss that? Of course it is. It's a document. But then the question that might enter your mind is, yeah, duh. Well, but what kind of document is it? So that's the next question. Text your answer. Winner gets a prize. Bragging rights. What kind of document is the Constitution? Rights, framework.
Jeanette said rights.
Yeah. Good. Written. Okay. Yes, it's a written document. Yes.
Binding was in there.
Yep. It's a binding. Yes, it is binding. In fact, we're going to talk about that today. It's instructions. Ooh, I like that. Megan.
Limited power.
Darlene. Okay. And you guys are going in the right direction here. Limited power, of course. Law. Yes. It's a legal document. Absolutely, David. Rules. Ooh, Sherry. I like that one too. It's rules. Freedoms. Yep. Well,
Hey, Michael, when we're done here, we get the right answers. Maybe we could have these experts teach Congress and Senate and everyone else what the Constitution really.
Yeah. Well, after today, you're going to be able to teach a lot of people, and we're just getting started. We've got many more things to cover, but today's going to be, you're going to be able to start using the document in a very powerful way, and we'll give an example of that. So it's a framework document. Yep, got that. All right, good answer. So let's forefathers, yes, definitely they did that. So let's answer this. And the answer is, oh, okay. Well, that was my little. I should have clicked on that to give my instructions for this, but I did it verbally. All right, the first useful answer is, it is a requirements document. Did you ever think of that? It's a requirements document. So and so shall do this. So and so can't do that. It is a requirements document, also known as a system specification document. Probably never heard this before, have you? This is a new class, never been taught before. It's a system specification document. What system is it specifying, and who is specifying it? Let's see. Got any answers for that one? What system is it specifying? Just name the system, if whatever makes sense to you.
So
And who is the author of who is specifying this? Right? Okay. Federal government is the system. We the people. Oh, Martin. Very good. Lots of we the peoples. That's who's specifying it. Yes, system is government. Government, but what kind of government? It's not all. Is it the state government? Is it the city council? What is it? The federal, the republic, the people, the peoples. They're the one people are specifying it. Yep. Federal government. Yes, it is actually the United States government is the system, system of governance that it is specifying, and it is the people who are doing it. It is specifying or stipulating. This is a requirements document or a system specification document specifying or stipulating the requirements of we the people for the system of government for the United States of America. Okay, everybody knows that about, when you really, don't necessarily say it that way, but that's what it is. Okay, so let's keep going. So let's talk about, what is that system specification? What is that? What do we need to include? Right. First, we include the purpose. Why what the system is for, which we asked in the last class. What is the Constitution for, right? And that's part of the specification. If you don't know that, then you have no basis for anything else in designing your system or anything. You don't know why you're going to do it. What's it for, right? And then, okay, so the purpose tells us why we're creating the system. The function says what does the system need to do, right? This is a requirement. So hey, here's why, what this we are saying what it is for and what it needs to be for, and functions are what is it supposed to be doing. You can see that obviously this is important. And then it also includes the structure of the system. That's part of the specification. And it also includes could include some processes if they need to be specified. If sometimes that's left to design to define those, but that's the how it needs to be. So there's the why in the purpose, the what in the functions, what it does and what it is, the structure, and the processes is how it's required to operate. So this is not a design, it is a specification. What processes are required, what's for what purpose, what the system needs to do, and what it is by requirements specified by we the people are saying this is what it's got to be. Okay, and so these all interact, but then there's something else that comes into play, and that is core principles. Those are not necessarily in the specification, although they can be, but they are certainly implied, and they are used to determine all the other things. They are the assumptions that drive everything. Okay, and so that shows these relationships here. Core principles, everything depends on that. Okay, and then of course, in addition to these things, there are rules everywhere. Rules for functions, rule for structure, rule for processes, lots of rules. So this is what a system specification will contain. So let me ask you, where are the core principles in this case? So go ahead, type in your answer. Where would you expect the core principles to be? In the preamble. Okay, good guess. What else? Where would the core principle, where would you find them? In the articles. You mean in the articles in the Constitution, the 7 articles. Okay. Articles, amendments. Good. This is all, you're going to see stuff there. Yep. Carolyn, Declaration of Independence. Well, that's interesting. So the Declaration of Independence is what I was looking for. And to show that the Declaration articulates the core principles for this system, right? For the American system of government, core principles are in that document. And so they are not separate from the Constitution. In fact, they are the foundation of the Constitution, right? So let's take a look at that. We're gonna look at the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration. And Carolyn, can you select somebody to read this paragraph out loud?
Jody.
The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
Excellent. So my next question is, and I'd like to, type out your answers as you can think of them. Are there any, and what are the principles that are either implicitly or explicitly contained in this paragraph? What principles? And just list them out. So you see any principles here? This might be a little trickier. The next paragraph will be easier, but there's a couple of really important principles in here that I want to see if you guys are able to extract from this. Natural law, God, yes. There's a God, nature's God. And that's God with a capital G. So what does that mean? dissolve the political bands. Yeah, unity, one people. Okay, that's all good. Now, keep in mind, what I'm looking for in particular is the principles that underlie the Constitution, underlie our system of government. Okay. Sovereign, world has a right to know. Good. I love it. I love it. You guys are using your brain and communicating. It's good stuff. Separate and equal. The laws of nature. People have the authority to determine their government. Martin, yes, self-government. That is a principle. And this paragraph is basically, if you look at what it says here, it says to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, right? So they have the right to do this. They have the right to dissolve the political bands, right, and separate and govern themselves. That's because that's what they're doing. They're saying we can govern ourselves, and we are going to do that, and we are declaring that like this is what we're doing. Objective truth, equality. Okay. I'm not seeing that here, but that's in the next paragraph. Morality. Yep. Laws of nature. Nature's God. God and self-government. Good stuff. All right. So I'm going to go on. I think, hopefully you'll see that this is what I extracted from that. You'll all be in agreement. Core principles. There is one God, right? Not only are they acknowledging God, but they're making it clear there's one God with a capital G. That's the principle of monotheism, which we're all familiar with, right? It also is clear that nature's God and the laws of nature. God created the universe, including our earth, according to his law, which is creationism. That's a principle that we take. Our founders obviously believed in that. The principles are really important because those are things that we believe in that don't change ever, right? And it's also that God created man. That is also a principle in there, which is part of creationism. And then we each have God-given or natural rights, right? We are entitled to these natural things, right? That's so they're not saying what they are, but they're saying that God gave us rights. It's in there. All right. So here's the second paragraph. So somebody, Carolyn, to read this one.
Cal Walcott, go ahead. Cal, please.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Awesome. Thank you, Cal. So just using the chat, what principles are in here? Just, briefly, just a phrase or whatever, just start listing principles that are in here. Between these two paragraphs, I extracted 7 principles and 5 rights. Plus, the implication is that there's more rights than this, but so 7 plus, I call it. Rights given by God. Yes. Yep. God endowed rights. All men are created equal. Very good. Self-evident, equal. Truth. Okay, specific rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, the rights of the people. Government is to secure rights. The purpose, yes. The rights of the people. Boy, a common theme here, huh? The rights of the people. Very important. Governments instituted by men, by the people. Very good. We can change and abolish our government at will. Yes, Martin, excellent. We are the authority. The right to abolish and form a new government. Inalienable rights. Consent of the governed. Yes, Anthony, I like that. That's important principle too. Consent of the governed. Good. Good stuff. All right, so let's see what I came up with. So here's some more. This is from the second paragraph. All men are created by God, obviously, as equals. That doesn't mean we're the same, like we should have the same stuff. It means we have spiritual equality. The principle of spiritual equality. That's what I refer to it, since it's equality before God, not in material sense, and not in terms of interests and abilities and possessions, things like that, but spiritually, absolutely equal. All men are endowed by God with certain unalienable rights. That is critical. Several people mentioned that one, and let's just list a few of those. So we have the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the three big ones in that paragraph. But there's more, and the dot 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 means that this wasn't the complete set. They said among these, which means that it's not limited to these three. It's just because they didn't say them. We also have the right of self-governance, which was implied in the first paragraph, because they were saying, hey, we're going to govern ourselves, right? We have the right to do that. God gave us that right. And then the right, in fact, the duty, and that's key. It's not just a right. It's not I may do this. It's I must do this. It is a duty of we the people to alter our government as needed. So we have a huge responsibility, we the people do, in that regard. And of course, as some mentioned, the purpose of government is to secure these rights. Very simple. And then finally, government authority is derived from the consent of the governed. That's the basis for why they chose a republic, right? Consent of the governed is representative of the people themselves, their consent. And ongoing, like over and over, not just once. All right, so that's 7 principles and 5+ rights that are just in those first 2 paragraphs. That is the foundation of the Constitution. And so we got to keep these in mind as we work through things. We're going to use this in our thinking process, because these are our rocks that never change. This is the American system. All right, so system specification. Let's talk about purpose. Again, we talked about it last time. We're just going to review real quick. So once again, somebody want to read that? Pick someone, Carolyn.
Ellen Betha, please.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Very good. Thank you, Don. There are 6 purposes that are specified in this document, or stipulated. It's not just a nice, oh, here's why we did it. No, it's more than that. This is a specification. This is where we, the people, stipulate how it's going to be. We're stipulating why this Constitution is existing. So it's not up to other interpretations or other we want this or we want that. My purpose is different. You can't have that, because these are the purposes. These are the only valid purposes that are allowed for this system of government. So that's really powerful, and you're going to see we're going to show how important that is in an example. But that's why I just wanted to. Purpose is critical part of the specification. Okay, so here's the test. Is it constitutional? In Georgia last year, there's a bill, Senate Bill 144. It passed and was signed by the governor. What this bill does, it allows a manufacturer, it says that a manufacturer cannot be held liable for failing to warn consumers of health risks beyond what the EPA labeling requirements is. So the EPA requirements are basically nothing for many of these companies. So basically, it's giving manufacturers of pesticides immunity from failure to warn against health risks. Is it or is it not constitutional? So let's hear from on the chat. Jody says not. Okay, and if good, not heck no. Okay, so let me add a little bit to that when you reply in your text. Tell me why it's not. What constitutional justification says this is not constitutional? If you can think of that. If you can't, just yes or no is fine. And I'm wondering if there's any yeses, because does the Constitution prevent this? And if you can't say where it doesn't, then how can you say no? Is the Constitution failing, or is what's failing here? Oh, Martin, you're too dang smart, man. We're just going to ignore that answer for a minute just to see what other people say. Government should secure our right to life. Oh, that's a good one, Darlene. That's a good argument. You see, this is where you got to understand the Constitution to use it in a real life situation. But let me just twist your brain a little bit more. Can you justify your no simply by using the preamble, simply by using the purpose of government? Is that enough to say that this is unconstitutional? Yes, Dawn, it doesn't promote the general welfare. Very interesting. Okay, so you guys keep going. I'm gonna look at this. So here's the preamble, and there's 6 possible purposes that anything that's part of our system of government, it needs to be justified as serving one of these purposes. And if it can't do that, then it's not belonging in our system, right? Because these aren't just, this is why the founders did it. This is why we, the people, we stipulate it has to, anything that we do has to be for one of these purposes. Very important to understand that. And so we're going to take a look at a bit of the Constitution. Article 6, Section 2. Somebody, Carolyn, pick somebody to read that.
Kathleen, please.
Okay, we the people,
No, not that. Just the bottom part.
Article 6.
Yeah, there you go.
Section 2, 6.2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding.
So one might argue that the state of Georgia can do whatever they want because it's a state, and manufacturing and agriculture, pesticides, there's nothing in the Constitution that gives the federal government the authority to regulate that. So why can't the states do that how they want? Does the Constitution even apply? What would your answer be to that? Like if somebody argued that to you, what would you say to them? See, look at this clause here is called the supremacy clause, but the last part of it is not really associated with it. It's not normally associated with the supremacy clause, but look what it says. So not only is the U.S. The Constitution and the laws made that are consistent with or in adherence to or made in pursuance of the Constitution, no other laws, but those, the good laws, and the treaties made under their authority, meaning that the lawful treaties that are constitutional only. But then it says, this shall be the supreme law of the land. The judges in every state shall be bound by this Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. And anything in the Constitution, that means state constitutions or laws of any state, to the contrary, is no good. Right? You can't. It's in other words, not only the judges, but the people, the laws and the state constitutions have to be in adherence to the U.S. Constitution. That's what this is saying. So you can't argue this is a states' rights issue. And then the other argument you might make is, well, what about the Constitution doesn't let Congress regulate business, not like this. So what about freedom of free enterprise? Can't the manufacturers do what they want? Right. So if you just looking at the purpose, right? So let's look at that. Does this bill, this state bill, allow us to form a more perfect union? No. Does it establish justice? Not a chance. Does it ensure domestic tranquility? I doubt it. Does it provide for the common defense? No way. Does it promote the general welfare? Maybe. Well, actually, it promotes somebody's welfare. Is it the general welfare? Is it everybody, the people? Look down here at section 1 where it says I just grab a bit of it. This is their justification. They don't normally do this, but in this case they did. Their findings, they said all these wonderful things about why we need to allow pesticide manufacturers to have liability from causing harm, because there's so much money in the agricultural business, right? And Georgia farmers rely on inputs, meaning pesticides, to grow their crops and keep yields high. So in other words, this is really good for Georgia farmers and the farming industry. Is that the general welfare? No. It's even if there's nothing wrong with farmers, but that's still not the general welfare. So since they're writing this bill and they passed it, it doesn't serve any of these purposes. So the answer is no. And this is our indictment engine should catch that and should have stopped this bill dead in its tracks. Because since when can you cause harm and fail to warn the people that you've harmed and get immunity? Like, really? No, the Constitution, they didn't screw it up and they didn't leave this out. There is no question about it. It serves no purpose that's been ordained or stipulated. So it's not in the requirements. In fact, even the states are bound to these to serve these purposes. And this bill does not do that. It is unconstitutional. And every court, even state courts, are obligated. If it ever goes to trial, they need to say, sorry, this is no good. What do you think the chance? Now, this is a new bill, so probably hasn't been tested yet. But if enough people understood this, then we would get the result that we should be getting. So this is an interesting, I thought this was interesting. This is a real current situation.
You hit the nail on the head if more people understood it. And I think that's what most of us are missing is we really don't understand the Constitution.
That's right. And it's not, you can't understand a system by analyzing its parts. Like if you look at a person and you take a person into pieces and you study every single cell, do you understand that person?
Right.
No. If you take a house and you take all the pieces and you put them out in the yard and you look at them, do you understand the house? No. You cannot just look at the pieces and say, well, now we know. No. So you can't do that with the Constitution either. You have to use how everything's connected to everything. That's how you use it. You don't just look at the pieces. So right.
This is an example of the state bending the rules of an unconstitutional federal office, which had no business setting them in the first place, to allow them to discriminate against one group for the benefit of another group.
That's right. That's right. And that's not general welfare. Therefore, it cannot be justified under the specification of the purpose. It has to be one of those 6 purposes, and it's not. So just on that alone, it is unconstitutional. You cannot expand the purpose of the federal government beyond the specification of the Constitution, which is a requirements document. That's why it's so important to understand that this is we the people telling the people that we designate our servants what they are allowed to do, what they are required to do, and what they cannot do. And they cannot do anything that isn't specified. And it doesn't say, oh, you can also have the purpose of helping pesticide companies. No, and it actually doesn't even help the farmers. The state of Georgia claimed it helps the farmers, but leaving farmers no choice but to use poisons to put on their fields and giving themselves cancer is not exactly a benefit to the farmers. But it is a benefit to the pharmaceutical industry and the pesticide company. So it really is not a general welfare. It is a special interest, which is exactly what the Constitution was designed to prevent. So it is absolutely unconstitutional. So let's look at, first we got to look at the functions is what the Constitution is supposed to do. That's the functional specification says, what should our federal government be doing? Okay, so we're going to look at that a little bit. So here's an example in the Constitution, should be familiar to the very beginning of Article 1, right? Somebody read that.
Section 1, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives.
Now, are there any functions in here? They don't use that word. Right. So let's take a look at another section here. Keep going. Read this part too.
The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment.
Okay, so there's that word power again. Power impeachment. Impeachment, the House of Representatives can do this. This is what they do. They can impeach, right? They can impeach anyone in the federal government, right? So I mean, if they're elected, they don't have to impeach. Sometimes they can just fire them. But in this case, so they call it the power of impeachment. Really, it's the function of impeachment. And so, just so you know, whenever you see the word power in the Constitution, they're really talking about a function. It's just the word they use. I don't know if the word function existed back then, but that's really what it is. And so it really should read all legislative functions, and that's plural because there's lots of them, right? And so this isn't one of them. This is a reference to the functions which are described elsewhere. One of them being the function of impeachment, which is a function that is assigned by our requirements specification to the House of Representatives, which is a structural element, which we'll get to that next. So just so you see, there's functions all throughout this document. And if you want to find them, just look for the word power, and then that's a function. Okay, but just looking here in terms of function, so I just wanted to show you wherever you see the word power, those are the functions. Okay, and so legislative powers is a set of functions. It's not a specific function. So and we'll talk more about that. So just wanted to introduce that concept.
We've got a comment from Evan. So what's considered general welfare? And Marty put it's a function of the functions in this case.
Okay, so actually, these are great questions. And being a systems engineer for 40 years, I understand very well the subtle differences between different parts of English and what they mean in terms of a system specification. The general welfare phrase is a purpose of the concept. It is what the system is for by specification, meaning that we are specifying that this system must serve these purposes. And so anything that doesn't serve these purposes cannot be in the design or the implementation and you can't use it that way because that's not the way we specified what you can and can't do and how you can use it and for what purpose. So it is a purpose requirement, not a functional requirement. And it might take some time for this to sink in, but it's really important to understand when you're arguing something, the distinction between purpose and function. Purpose is why we have it. Function is what it does. That's the distinction.
This is really a whole new lesson that many of us have not been taught this way.
Never in school, never anywhere. No one has ever seen this before. I'm a systems engineer applying that to the Constitution and what that means today, since we have advanced system science a great deal, so we can do our job of enforcing the Constitution on a level never before possible. And so this is all relating to, this is the knowledge we need so that we can enforce the Constitution properly. So just stay with it. If it's a little confusing at first, don't worry, you'll get it. It might take a few iterations of reviewing and thinking about this, but this is great stuff that you guys, I love the feedback. So look at all these functions. So we're just going to go. And notice in the Constitution, it's not just the legislative branch, which is the Congress, is the structural element, and the executive branch, which is the president, as a structural element, and the Supreme Court as a structural element. These are all the functions that are assigned to these structural elements. It also assigns things to the states and to we the people that most people don't think about or talk about when they talk about the Constitution. But since it's a requirements document, there's lots of work to go around. So we the people have to establish the Constitution. Nobody else can do that. We enforce the Constitution. Nobody else would do that, but they really can. They should, to whatever degree they can. But ultimately, that's up to us. We elect the representatives and the president and the vice president. We pay taxes. We judge the facts, and by that I mean petit juries. Right? That's the people who judge the facts. And we do presentments and indictments as a grand jury. And we can alter the U.S. Constitution. So these are things that the people do. And that's all. If you read the Constitution, you'll see that these things are allowed for, or it's implied that and the states originally, now they don't, but they used to appoint the senators. They fill vacancies temporarily until the Senate can reconvene or whoever needs to reconvene. They paid the taxes before we had the income tax, right? That's interesting. They can request a convention. They ratify amendments. They can request federal aid in the case of a domestic problem if more than they can handle, like in Michigan or all these places that need help. and they can apply for a convention. Congress, these are the ones that you're most familiar with, although we're talking about them in a very different way than they are usually discussed, because we're making a distinction between functions and rules and examples of laws, as opposed to like each law is not a different function. Each law is an example of a function at work. The function is making the laws. That's something that Congress does. So when you think about a function, what do? They make laws. They lay and collect taxes. They appropriate and borrow money. They admit new states, right? They constitute inferior tribunals to the Supreme Court. They can declare war. They propose amendments, call conventions, override vetoes. The House can impeach. The House can originate revenue bills. The Senate tries impeachments and ratifies treaties. See, so these are all the things they do, and it's maybe not a complete list. I ran out of space. The president can execute the laws, receive ambassadors, convene Congress, give the State of the Union. That last one was a woozy, wasn't it? Make treaties, but they have to be confirmed ratified by the Senate. Nominate ambassadors, other officers, and the Supreme Court judges. They can fill vacancies temporarily. They can require opinions of his department heads, grant reprieves and pardons, and veto bills. So this is the things the president can do. Okay, where does it say the president can kill people? Doesn't say that. Okay, well, that's an interesting topic for later. Supreme Court, they don't have much to do. They just administer justice. That's it. Doesn't say in the Constitution that they tell us they're the final authority on what the Constitution means, is it? That's the people's job, right? That's not their job. So this is a fairly comprehensive list of functions. It's not complete, but it's just to give you an idea the distinction between functions and what is called powers in the document. And a lot of the things that are in there are misunderstood by folks because they're not really power. They're not functions. They're actually something else, which we'll talk about. We'll get to that. So let's keep going. Structure. So they define a Congress with a Senate and a House of Representatives. The structural, the legislative branch, the executive branch has a president, a vice president, right? It has ambassadors and other consul, things like that, and all sorts of other officers. You have a judicial branch with a Supreme Court and the inferior courts, which are set up by the Congress. So these are the structural elements. Are there any other structural elements in the Constitution?
The people.
That's a good answer. Yeah, let's see. What is? Click this button and see what it tells us. We've got the states and we the people are in there. Yeah, so they're part of the specification. In fact, they're a very important part, right? And so, like, most of the Constitution, it's saying what the purpose is. It's saying what the different groups can do. It's defining the structure and saying what each one can do. And it has a whole bunch of rules that restrain or restrain the relationships or make required relationships between these structural elements. And again, a system, the whole of a system is greater than the aggregate of its parts. You cannot understand a system simply by looking at the parts and adding them up. You have to look at how the whole thing fits together, both statically and dynamically. So we're going to be looking at, and this is how you can, by doing that, you can use the Constitution better than if you just read line by line and try to memorize stuff. That's almost impossible. So then you have, what is this relationship here between we the people and the House of Representatives? Anybody think of a relationship that's there?
We hired them.
Right. We elect those guys, right? Right. Right. And I'm by the way, this is the way the Constitution was originally set up, and then I talk about how it's changed. So yes, the people elect the House of Representatives, right? And then what about this one over here? The L is the state legislator. There's the three branches on the executive, legislative, and judicial. So L is the state legislators. What is their relationship to the Senate, the U.S. Senate?
Martin put on to elect a district.
Yes, appoint. The states used to appoint the senators.
That's the House. That's the House.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the people elect the representative. The states appoint the senators. That's how it was.
That's
Too
how
bad
it
it's not
was.
like that. But they changed that. We'll get to that. But originally this was a structural relationship. And then you have all these other kind of relationships. Right? You can kind of see like, well, it gets kind of complicated, right? But this we can show it all in one picture. It makes it a little easier. But it is kind of so you see we the people elect the president and the vice president and the House of Representatives. That's it. Now it's the Senate as well, right? But it used to just be those three, right? And then of course you've got all these different relationships. You have the president has a relationship to Congress by giving the State of the Union, right? Um, the the House of Representatives and the has a relationship with the judicial branch. They give them money. Well, actually, the Congress, that's this one here. The Congress gives them money. Congress gives the executive money. So all these different relationships between the structural elements, this is what the system, they specified, the Constitution specifies these structural elements and these relationships. Okay. So we're not going to get into all of that because that's a bit much but just wanted to show you, the structural view of the system.
Excuse me, Martin Holtz has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Martin.
Hey, I just wanted to very quickly just point out a little bit of a point of order to illustrate something, and that is you're talking about the State of the Union. The State of the Union is not technically in the Constitution in those words, but the Constitution does specify that the president will make an annual report to Congress.
Yeah, it does say that they will provide information. It doesn't say how. Right.
Right, and
Right. I don't
it says
imply.
from time to time or something, right?
That's right. Yes, it provides them information. It doesn't even say report. It doesn't say how they're going to provide. That has evolved over the years. But yes, you're
Yeah,
right. It doesn't
exactly
have to
right.
be a speech. That's correct. But
No, in
again,
fact, the first ones weren't a speech; they were a letter.
right, and that's an interesting thing that you brought up because this is the Constitution is a specification. It says the president must inform the Congress from time to time of what's going on and making recommendations. It doesn't say how. The how is the design and the implementation. There's different ways to design a solution that implements these requirements. And that is why it's so important to realize this is a requirements document because when the government was first started to function, there were multiple designers and they came up with very different designs and they argued about it because each one claimed to be constitutional and or not, so this isn't constitutional. Well, but those are design arguments, not requirements arguments, and it's important to understand the distinction. And so that relationship between usage, implementation, design, and requirements, and the vision, which is expressed in the Declaration, all of those work together to produce a system that is intended to manifest a certain qualities or attributes of our society, namely a better union, justice, liberty. Those are the things that we want to result from the operation of this system. And those documents work in layers are intended to bring about those outcomes. And so, it's just a different way of looking at it, but I think it's very helpful in our modern world. It is a systems specification, which gives us tremendous power because everything has to meet the specs. And if it doesn't, then we have a duty to either change the specs if the specs aren't producing the results that we want, or if they're not designing according to specs or implementing according to design or using it properly, then we got a problem. Right. So let's keep going because we've got a lot to cover here. So then there's some processes, and I'm just going to mention, and there actually are some processes in the Constitution, which
Michael,
how do we do these things? How do these pieces? Yes.
you just froze.
Oh, I did. Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So there's a legislative process that's described in there, how bills are supposed to be on order. There's that. So the fact that normally processes would be specified in a design document, not in a requirement specification. So if you are requiring a process, that means it's very important that they didn't want to leave the process design to anyone else. So that means we, the people, are stipulating how how bills are passed, basically, and resolutions. That's important. And the other thing is the presidential elections, including the vice president. We're not just saying go elect. We're telling them how it has to work to a certain degree. We are specifying that this, it's a much more detailed specification than is often. So if you see a process, it means it's really important if it's in the specification. They don't want deviations from these steps or these, whatever is in that process. And they briefly, I don't know if it's barely a process, but there's a little bit of a process that they describe the amendment process as well. So those three processes are actually in the Constitution, which is unusual unless it's, processes that they don't want. They want to, hey, they, meaning we the people, are putting restraints on how they can go about it. So that's interesting. All right, quick definition of power. The first one that we're going to use is the authority to decide or do something. And I'm defining it this way because that is really the way they use it in the Constitution. So it really means it's the system functions, not, it's the authority to do this. So that's why I'm defining it that way. But later on, it's much too complicated for today's session. Power is much more than just authority. So we're going to define it more thoroughly later, but for now, that's good enough. So now we're near the end. We're going to look at a map that we're going to use in order to appreciate some of the system dynamics, because that's where things really get interesting. And system, everything else we looked at so far are system views of the system, things that don't change. There's the static properties of a system from multiple points of view. The purpose, those don't change. The functions don't change. The structure doesn't change. And those processes that are specified are not supposed to change to the degree that they're specified. But there's still some interesting things happen dynamically that you cannot specify as statically. So we need a tool for doing that. And so you might remember, for those who came to the first session, the political spectrum, right, state and political power, going from 0 to 100. But that's inadequate to be able to model the dynamics of this system that we specify in our Constitution. So we need to add something else. There's another kind of power that needs to be included. Using the text, does anybody have a guess of what else we need to include in order to dynamically model our political system and our, the way our society works based on our Constitution? I mean, you may not get it. I just give you guys a chance if somebody wants to really work their brain. You'll recognize it when I put it up here. So let me put it up here. The people authority. Okay, there's that. The people power. Where does the people power fit into this, right? So let's take a look. What do we got? Oh, look at that. Non-governmental organizations or corporate or economic power. Also very relevant to our society. Would you agree? And so I put it over here to show us all the different possibilities you could go, and let's just keep filling this out, and then we'll talk about what's on this chart. So, and we have personal power, or we the people power, as Carolyn mentioned. So we've got these three kinds of power that interact, and so we want to understand that interaction when we look at how the system that we are specifying operates in life dynamically. Okay, so let's add some more stuff. So we got our numbers. So down here, this is 0 government power, total government power, 0 corporate power or organized private power, and total power by corporations. Okay, so any of these, so you start to see this is a map, and we're somewhere on this map at any given time, right? So what do we got? Where are we? So if we have this, I make this rectangle because you can't just plot our location as a single point. Now there's 4 points that are part of our location that needed to say here's where we are. So in other words, our location is the rectangle. And if it's this huge rectangle, what this means, and this is the ultimate dream of the New World Order, where government has all the power politically and people have no political power, and their corporate friends or themselves, if in many cases, have all the economic power and the people have 0 power. So if you plot these 4 points, you get a big ass rectangle where the discrepancy between the people's power, which is down here, is 0, because this line right here, the bottom edge of this rectangle represents the level of power that we have as individuals, which would be 0 in that case. That's their dream. Okay. And so if we have something like this, it's not quite as bad. They have a lot of power, the corporate and the state. The people have a little bit of freedom, but not a whole lot, right? And then you have here, it's getting better, right? And then, oh, that's really good, but still not perfect. And then you have the perfect center. Now, at this center point, you have a perfect balancing of powers between the state and between non-state entities, usually corporations. And we, the people, have the maximum amount of freedom that is possible without creating anarchy, right? Where you have just enough government power, but not too much, and just enough corporate power, but not too much. That's the really hard to maintain that precisely because, human nature and so on. But that is the goal, and that is the crucial point on this map that is a guide. Right? And so you have too much state power over here, anything above the smiley face on the red line, not enough state power over here, all the way down to anarchy, right? Too much corporate power on this yellow line to the above the smiley, and not enough corporate power, right? Too much government regulation and so forth. It's stifling the economy below that, right? So you've got all these scenarios. We can be at any time, we can be at some point along the too much state, not enough state. We can't actually do both because sometimes they have too much power, but then they don't use it. So they're not, in other words, if they're over here in the S plus, that means they're doing things they shouldn't be doing. If they're down here in the S minus, it means they're not doing things that they should be doing. And vice versa with corporations. This is corporations that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Here's corporations that are not doing things that they should be doing. So we can be imbalanced in economically and politically.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Michael. I just wanted to let you know that it's 8:49 and Martin has his hand up, and
Okay.
I didn't know if you wanted to leave any time for Q&A.
Yes, let me just quickly finish up just a minute, and then because this is the last slide. So let me just say we've got this triangle down here is liberty, and the lowest point, if we have too big of a rectangle, we have no liberty. The most liberty we could possibly have is at this smiley point, right? And then over to the right, if we have too much, if the two corporations rule, that's fascism, and if the state rules, that's communism. And the one above is both communism, fascism, like that's tyranny. That's the worst of it. And so tyranny is 0 at the smiling point, and liberty is maximum, right? And in this big rectangle, liberty is 0 and tyranny is total. So it goes from, those are the different extremes that are capable of. And where are we right now? I would estimate we're here. Some might put it more or less, but keep in mind, if we're going to plot our position, we have to plot where we are on each of these 4 quadrants here, or these 4 triangles, right? And so you make a rectangle from that, you would say, how far are we from that sweet spot in the middle? So we can argue about whether or not that's the right location. So I'm going to stop right there, and we are going to, you can imagine that there's so much to cover, and that I can only do so much in an hour and 15 minutes. So this is about as much as I can squeeze in. You can probably want to watch this again to really digest these concepts, and we will keep building on this as in future episodes. So I open it up for conversation. Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
We have Martin's got his hand up. First of all, Michael, I'd like to say thank you. Larry Singer said this is why I joined Tactical Civics for stuff like this. Jody Berlin said great stuff. So Marty, I'm going to let you comment, and then we've got a special song we're going to play at the end.
Before Martin comments, I wanted to read Jody Berlin's. He said, "This is really good stuff. Really good. I think this teaching should continue over and over again for both new members and current members. It is making all of us think and understand what is constitutional and what is not. Very good stuff." Thank you, Jody.
Yes.
I'm just going to make. I had actually a question on the last slide, and the question I put in the chat as well. And the question is, where does virtue and morality factor in here? Is it under the people and personal power?
Yeah. Okay. In the system dynamics, right? If we're virtuous, then that will show up in that map by making the rectangle very small. The smaller we make it, the more it reflects a virtuous culture, that we're doing our job, that we're behaving properly.
And
The bigger that rectangle, the more unvirtuous is our society.
That's a great analogy. And then the statement I wanted to make is that chart also shows that our system is built for give and take. Our system is built for all these contentions.
Yeah.
And the only thing that keeps the box small is the morality and virtue of we the people.
Well said.
Guys, this is the principle, the foundation that we need to know and learn to educate people, where we move forward with tactical civics. Because if we don't know this, we don't go any further. And this is why we will all be founders at one time. I believe that. We will have to know this to be part of our grand jury, our militia. We will have to know this information to put it into the indictment engine. And David has given us so many great tools to learn and work with, and we thank him for that.
Yeah, I hope it's not too late for a question. And not trying to be controversial, just curious, mainly your opinion, Michael. Obviously the Constitution, gives us the right to alter or abolish. Just curious, your thought, is there a point where you can no longer alter? Like, it's just such in a bad place that it needs to be abolished? Like, where do you see the line between the two?
Okay, so in the Declaration, one of the core principles is that we have the right to alter. It says we have in the Declaration we can abolish it, but it doesn't just say we can abolish it. It says we can abolish it and establish a new government. So really, we're not abolishing it. We're actually just altering it. So that's why I just, you can alter it by changing it completely, or you can alter it a little. So it's really, you can change it. They're not recommending that you get rid of government. They're just saying it's the people's government. We stipulate what that government can do, what it is, what it's for. We stipulate all those things. So we can change that. We can change anything. Now, it doesn't mean we should go rushing and changing it, because we should only change it if the original stipulations and original requirements were wrong or not going to work, or inconsistent, or something wrong with them. If the design is flawed, or the implementation is flawed, or people are misusing it because the system is made up of people, that's different. You don't need to change the Constitution for that. What you need to do is enforce it, and that's what tactical civics is really all about. We're not necessarily, ultimately we do have reform laws and possibly reforming even the Constitution at some point, but really the main thrust of our efforts is to enforce the Constitution. Not
under the Declaration of Independence, we've already done this once.
That's right.
Because we had the Articles of Confederation for a federal government, and they didn't work, and they weren't working.
Yes.
And so the people, through their congressional representatives, called a convention of states in order to amend the Articles of Confederation, and they turned around and scrapped the whole thing and designed the Constitution. We can do the same thing again, guys.
Pages worn by calloused hands, ink and fade through this broken land. The Bible and the Constitution stand. Promises carved in sacred stone. A republic built but not alone. Two books guide us when we roam. The word and the law, sacred and free. One for the soul, one for the dream. They hold us up, they let us be. The Bible and the Constitution, you and me. A preacher's a hymn, a patriot's fight. squeeze tight, both keep burning through the darkest night. Freedom's ink and holy grace, two old maps for the human race. Both hold power, both embrace the word and the law, sacred and free. One for the soul, one for the dream. They hold us up, they let us be. The Bible and the Constitution, you and me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us tonight. Again, thank you, Michael. This is just members of Tactical Civics that we're trying to educate people, see the importance of the Constitution, see the importance of the biblical principles. Tactical Civics is not a hard mission. It's really, it's the Bible and Constitution, and understanding them both in our power that comes from our sovereign King. And we only have one king. We call him King Jesus Christ. Not King Donald Trump, not King anything else. We thank you for joining us tonight.